I didn't argue when they told me to sit. The bench was hard plastic, wedged between a shoe store and a smoothie kiosk. Fluorescent light hummed above. The air smelled of sugar syrup and rubber soles. "Just wait here," my daughter-in-law said. Her tone clipped, efficient, like she was scheduling a meeting. "We'll come back for you." I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I was tired. Tired of proving I could walk the extra mile of tile floor, tired of reminding them I still had my own legs. They didn't look back as they moved toward the escalator. My son pushed the stroller, the children trailing behind. Their laughter blended with the chatter of teenagers and the echo of a store announcement about half-off jeans. The bench pressed into my back. I held my purse close. A woman passed carrying a bag stuffed with new towels. Another man balanced a tray of pretzels, salt spilling onto the tile. No one looked at me twice. I told myself it was temporary. 15 minutes, maybe 20. They'd shop, they'd return. I'd smile and pretend I didn't mind. But I noticed the way my daughter-in-law's hand lingered on my son's arm when she said, "She'll be fine here." As if I were luggage. As if benches were built for people like me, too slow, too visible. The first 10 minutes I sat straight, hands folded. The 15th minute I shifted, my hip aching. By the half hour I'd memorized the blinking neon sign across from me. Foot Locker, Foot Locker, Foot Locker. I pulled my phone from my purse. No messages. The battery already down to 30%. I put it back, as if conserving charge might somehow conserve dignity. A boy no older than 12 plopped onto the bench beside me, chewing bright red candy. He scrolled on his phone without a word. After a few minutes, he left, leaving a sticky wrapper pressed against the seat. I brushed it away. The loudspeaker announced another sale. The floor felt colder. My watch told me 45 minutes had passed. I tried not to calculate what they were buying that needed so long. At 1 hour, I tried calling my son. It rang, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. My voice would sound too brittle. At 2 hours, I stopped watching the escalators. I remembered when malls were new, when I used to bring Carl, before he grew too tall, too busy. He would tug my hand toward the toy store, wide-eyed at the rows of Lego sets. I always said yes, even when the budget said no. Now the toy store had been replaced by a vape shop, and Carl was somewhere above me, forgetting. I stayed. Because that's what they asked. Because a part of me still hoped obedience would mean belonging. But the clock kept moving, and the bench did not let me go. By the second hour, the bench had molded itself into my body. Every shift sent a pinch of pain down my hip, but I didn't move far. I didn't want to miss them, didn't want to be standing somewhere else when they finally decided to come back. The crowd changed. Afternoon shoppers trickled out, replaced by teenagers in packs, perfume clinging to their jackets, laughter sharp as coins dropped on tile. A couple argued outside the department store. A group of women carried glossy bags, their bracelets chiming like bells. None of them looked at me. Or maybe they did. Quick, sidelong glances at the old woman on the bench, alone, waiting. I tried my phone again. Carl's number. Straight to voicemail. My thumb hovered, then I ended the call. A message would sound desperate. Jody's number. This time it rang, then stopped. No callback. I stared at the empty space near the escalator where I'd last seen them disappear. That moment replayed in my mind. Jody's hand on Carl's arm, the stroller wheels rattling away. She'll be fine. Fine. Was this fine? A mall security guard passed, keys jangling at his belt. He didn't ask if I needed help, just swept his eyes over me and kept walking, as if I were part of the furniture. The air conditioning hummed louder. Or maybe it was my pulse. I folded and refolded the edge of a tissue in my pocket until it frayed. 3 hours. I remembered Ruby's voice, my granddaughter, at her birthday party last year. "Grandma, can you sit over there? It's too crowded here." She'd pointed to a chair against the wall, near the trash bin. I'd obeyed then, too. I always obeyed. A child with chocolate on his face ran past me, tripping, his balloon bouncing against the ceiling. His mother laughed, scooped him up, kissed his sticky cheek. I swallowed hard. 4 hours. My phone beeped, battery at 10%. I thought about conserving it, but what was the point? I dialed again. Same silence. The mall smelled different now. Less popcorn and sugar, more disinfectant. Stores were pulling down metal grates, employees stacking folded shirts in neat piles. A woman locked the jewelry counter, her eyes tired. I shifted on the bench. The plastic creaked. My legs were stiff. I wondered if Carl noticed the time. If Jody nudged him and said, "Shouldn't we get her?" Or if they were already home, bags by the door, dinner on the stove, telling themselves I had found my own way back. 5 hours. The crowd thinned. Music from the overhead speakers dropped to a low looping tune. The smoothie kiosk closed its shutters. The bench felt colder. My chest felt heavier. Maybe they weren't coming back. I pressed my palms flat against the seat, bracing myself as if to rise. But I didn't stand. I stayed exactly where they'd left me. Because if I moved, I'd have to admit it. They had left me. By the 6th hour, the mall had thinned to bones. What was once chatter and rushing footsteps was now the squeak of a mop across tile, the rattle of shutters coming down. The smoothie stand was dark, its fruit bowls wrapped in plastic. The pretzel place smelled only of bleach now. My phone gave one last blink, 5%. I tapped Carl's name again, though I already knew. Straight to voicemail. The screen dimmed before I could hang up. Then black. The weight of it in my palm was useless now, just a dead object. I slid it back into my purse, the zipper catching on the lining. Around me, benches emptied. Families herded their children toward the exits. A teenager carried a stack of shoeboxes, his mother's hand firm on his shoulder. A group of girls posed for a last photo in front of the fountain, their faces tilted toward the glittering lights. I stayed still. I wanted to believe any second I'd hear, "Mom? There you are." But the air didn't bend that way. A voice rose over the intercom. "Attention shoppers, the mall will be closing in 15 minutes. Please make your final purchases and proceed to the nearest exit." My chest tightened. Closing. I looked toward the escalators, the hallways. No familiar faces. Another guard walked by, jangling keys. He gave me a polite nod, the kind you give a stranger you'll never see again. I opened my mouth, but the sound caught in my throat. By the time I swallowed it, he was gone. The lights above dimmed slightly. Not darkness yet, but a warning. I remembered another kind of warning, when Frank, my husband, used to clear his throat before speaking. That soft little noise that meant, "I've made a decision." He'd been gone for 15 years, but the sound echoed in my chest now. The metal grates of the shoe store screeched shut. The jewelry counter was already covered. Even the fountain slowed, the water bubbling softer, as if conserving itself for the night. The bench pressed harder against my back. My legs stiffened. I imagined Carl loading the children into the car, Jody buckling seatbelts, the stroller folded in the trunk. I pictured them laughing at some private joke, bags of new clothes rustling at their feet. My name unspoken, my absence unmissed. The intercom again. The mall is now closing. All guests must proceed to the exits. But no one came for me. The last of the crowd funneled through the glass doors. The air shifted, cooler now. My own reflection stared back at me from the darkened shop fronts. An old woman on a plastic bench, purse clutched, eyes too wide. Then the gates came down with a final crash, sealing the stores one by one. And the mall, once a place of noise and light, began to close around me. The echo of the gates still rang in my ears when I saw him. A mall security guard in a navy jacket, keys clattering at his side, flashlight in hand though the lights were still on. His steps were heavy, unhurried. He didn't see me at first. He was checking doors, tugging on handles, scribbling on a clipboard. When his eyes finally landed on me, he frowned, as if I'd grown there. "Ma'am?" His voice carried across the empty floor. "We're closed." I gripped my purse tighter. "I know." I'm waiting for my son. He hasn't come back yet. He walked closer, scanning me the way you check an unattended bag. How long you been sitting here? I glanced at my dead phone. Since 2 o'clock. My voice cracked, thinner than I wanted. His eyebrows twitched. It's almost 9. I know. Your family leave you behind? The way he said it, half doubt, half accusation, cut more than if he'd laughed outright. They said they'd come back. They didn't. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck. Ma'am, we can't have people hanging around after hours. Liability, you understand. You need to head to the exit. I stood slowly, my knees protesting. That's what I want. But the doors, he shook his keys. Only staff doors now. Main entrances are locked. Then let me out. His eyes narrowed, searching my face. Do you have ID? Something to prove you belong here? Not, his voice lowered. Not vagrant? Heat climbed my throat. I came here with my family. I was told to wait. He didn't look convinced. His gaze lingered too long on my worn shoes, my plain coat, as if those were answers. I'll have to call my supervisor, he muttered. He spoke into his radio, static buzzing. Got a straggler here, elderly female, claims she was left pause. Yeah, I'll hold straggler, elderly, left. Words like stamps pressed into me. I thought of all the times I'd been called something smaller than my name. She'll be fine. She'll manage. She won't mind. The guard shifted, impatience in his stance. Supervisor says we'll have to log it. Can you wait a few more minutes while I check paperwork? Wait. Again, wait. Always wait. I sat back down because my knees had no fight. The bench was colder now, less forgiving. The guard walked off, radio crackling, leaving me in the dim hush of shuttered stores. And it struck me. I wasn't just forgotten. I was locked in. The guard came back 10 minutes later, clipboard in hand, pen already clicking. His face said inconvenience, not concern. Name? He asked, standing above me. I gave it. He wrote it down slowly, as though the letters themselves might lie. Address? I recited the street I'd lived on for 43 years. He repeated it back, stumbling like it was foreign. Phone number? My phone's dead. He raised an eyebrow. Convenient. It died because I've been waiting here since the afternoon. He scribbled something. Family member's contact? I gave Carl's number. He dialed, phone to his ear. After a few rings, he shook his head. Voicemail. He didn't leave a message, just snapped the phone shut. So you're saying they left you here? I'm not saying it. I'm living it. His eyes flicked to my coat, the frayed cuff where I'd mended it myself. Ma'am, you can understand how this looks. We can't just let people wander. You'll need to stay put until we sort this out. I've been staying put all day. He ignored that. Jotted another note. Supervisor wants me to hold you until morning. He'll handle it then. Morning? The word cracked out of me sharper than I meant. He nodded, already turning. Best I can do. Mall's on lockdown. Staff exits require clearance. Just sit tight, like luggage, like cargo. My pulse beat in my ears. You can't leave me here all night. He gave a shrug, not unkind but practiced. Better here than outside, ma'am. Safer. And then he walked off again, keys rattling, radio muttering. The bench groaned under my weight as I sank back. My hands trembled against my purse zipper. Safer, he said. Safe like a cage. Across the atrium, the fountain had shut off completely. Only silence now, broken by the squeak of a mop somewhere down the hall. I thought of Carl, of Jody, of the children asleep in their beds while I was catalogued like a lost package. The lights dimmed another notch. Shadows stretched across the tile. I pulled my coat tighter, though it barely helped. The mall had turned hollow, cavernous, like a mouth that had swallowed me whole. And for the first time that day, I realized This wasn't just waiting. This was being held. The sound reached me before the sight. A slow, wet drag across tile. The whir of a cleaning machine. Then she appeared from behind the corner, an older woman in a faded polo shirt, hair pulled tight, pushing a wide mop across the empty floor. Her cart rattled with bottles of cleaner and a half-empty coffee cup. She didn't notice me right away. She moved in practiced sweeps, her body bent like someone long resigned to the rhythm. When her eyes finally landed on me, she stopped. The mop hung dripping in her hands. "You're still here?" she asked. Not surprised. More annoyed. I straightened on the bench. "My family left me. They said they'd come back." Her mouth tugged sideways. "Families do that." The words hit sharp, almost casual, like she was talking about misplacing keys. "They locked the doors," I said. "The guard told me I have to wait until morning." She leaned on the mop, studied me. "Then wait. What else can you do?" Her tone wasn't cruel exactly, but it wasn't kind. I opened my purse, searching for something. Gum, a tissue, proof I still had use. My hands found nothing worth offering. She sighed, pushed the mop back into motion. "Don't wander. Cameras pick everything up. They don't like strays." "Strays?" I echoed. She didn't answer. The mop squeaked, leaving behind a shining streak. She moved further down the hall, her cartwheels clicking like punctuation. I watched until she disappeared behind the shuttered food court. Silence pressed in again. My throat burned, though I hadn't spoken more than a few words. Stray. As if I were something left behind on purpose, not by accident. I thought of the drawer back home where I kept little notebooks and stickers for the grandchildren. Treasures, waiting for hands that never reached. Tonight, they felt like artifacts for strangers. The bench creaked as I shifted, pulling my knees closer. The mall stretched out around me, endless tile, glass, steel. No warmth, no welcome. I closed my eyes, but the word stayed. Stray. And for the first time, I wondered if that's all I'd become. The bench no longer felt like a seat. It felt like a mark, a place where I had been pinned. The plastic pressed into my back, unforgiving, as if it wanted to remind me of every minute that had passed. My phone was finished. A blank screen, no more calls, no more chances to prove I still had a tether to someone outside these walls. I slid it back into my purse, heavy as a stone. The mall had changed its voice. During the day, it was chatter and footsteps. At night, it was mechanical, the whine of a vacuum, the faint buzz of lights that refused to go dark, the groan of steel cooling as the air conditioning shut down. I stood for the first time in hours. My legs trembled, unsure if they could hold me. They did, but barely. The ache in my hips spread sharp, reminding me I wasn't built for endless waiting. The corridor stretched in both directions, lined with shuttered stores. Posters smiled from behind glass, models in bright clothes, happy, mid-laugh. I walked slowly past them, the tap of my shoes echoing too loudly. Each store had a grate pulled down, teeth locked into the floor. No exit there. I checked the big glass doors near the atrium. Locked, a red light blinking on the panel. I pressed my palm against the cool glass. Outside was only a parking lot, dark and wide. No movement, no headlights searching for me. I stepped back, chest tight. What if no one came tomorrow? What if Carl thought I'd taken a taxi home, or that I'd wandered off and someone else had taken me in? What if he wasn't even wondering? The thought settled like lead in my stomach. I found another bench and sat, pulling my coat tight. The air was colder now, sharper, as if the building itself resented my presence. A sound startled me, a clang from the food court. I held my breath, listening, a chair scraping. Then silence again. Probably the cleaning crew. Or maybe just the building shifting. I whispered into the emptiness. "I'm still here." My voice sounded small, like a child's. The silence gave no answer. I thought of my house. The quilt folded at the end of my bed, the steady hum of the fridge, the narrow hallway lined with photos I hadn't touched in years. Familiar things. Mine. At least for now. Here, I was no one. A forgotten figure in a cavern of glass and steel. I closed my eyes, but rest didn't come. Images pressed in instead. Ruby walking past me at the library without a word. Carl raising his glass in a toast that didn't include me. Jody's laugh, sharp, just beyond the fence that afternoon. They'd left me long before tonight. The mall only made it visible. When I opened my eyes again, the lights above flickered, buzzing like flies. My chest rose and fell too quickly. For the first time, I wondered if waiting wasn't survival at all. Maybe it was surrender. The clatter of keys announced him before I saw him. Heavy steps, steady, moving down the corridor like he owned every echo. When the guard rounded the corner, his flashlight beam cut across my face. I blinked against it, raising a hand. "You're still here," he said flatly. "I told you." "My son hasn't come back." He lowered the light, but not the suspicion in his eyes. "Ma'am, we can't have this. Mall's closed. You're not supposed to be here." I stood slowly, knees stiff, coat pulled close. "You think I chose this?" His jaw tightened. "I think people make mistakes. Some wander in after hours. Some don't have anywhere else to go." The words stung worse than the cold. "I have a home," I snapped, louder than I meant. The sound bounced off the steel shutters, too sharp in the silence. He shifted his weight, arms crossed. "Then why are you here?" "Because they left me. Because I did as I was told, and now I'm a problem on his clipboard." But the truth felt too raw to hand over. "Call them again," I said instead. "Call my son. Carl Hemsworth. He'll answer this time." He pulled out his phone, punched the number without looking at me. It rang. I held my breath. Voicemail. Again. He sighed, pocketing the phone. "Nothing. And I'm not babysitting all night." "I don't need a babysitter. I need to go home." His eyes softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened back. Rules are rules. Buildings sealed till morning. Only staff clearance works the locks. "So I stay on this bench like a stray dog?" He didn't flinch. "Like a guest we can't log out. Don't make it harder than it has to be." I laughed, bitter and small. "Harder? You think this is easy?" He glanced at the security camera above us, then back to me. "Look, ma'am. Just sit. Don't wander. If the cameras catch you roaming, they'll call the cops. And that's paperwork I don't need." The words dropped like stones. Cops. Paperwork. As if I were an intruder in the very place I'd been told to wait. "I've done nothing wrong," I said quietly. "Then keep it that way." He walked off, the jingle of keys fading until there was only the hum of fluorescent lights again. I sank back onto the bench, my pulse loud in my ears. Somewhere, above the locked doors, banners still hung. Family sale. "This weekend. Bring everyone." The irony twisted sharp in my chest. Everyone. Except me. I pulled my coat tighter, staring at the blank phone in my lap. Morning felt like a lifetime away. And I began to wonder, when the doors opened again, who would actually be waiting on the other side? The mall at night is not silent. It breathes. The vents sigh in slow cycles, warm air replaced by cold. Somewhere, a machine hums and then cuts off, leaving a vacuum that makes the tile seem to ring. Every sound feels bigger in the emptiness. I sat hunched on the bench, purse clutched to my chest, when the first noise came, a sharp bang from the food court. My head snapped up. For a moment, I thought it might be them, coming back for me after all, but the hall stayed dark. Only the echo lingered. Another sound followed. A scrape, like a chair dragged too quickly. Then silence. I held my breath, straining to listen. My ears filled with the rush of my own pulse. It was nothing, I told myself. A cleaner. A cart. Buildings make noises when they sleep. But my body didn't believe the words. My palms were damp against the purse strap. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. But closing them made the dark worse. The noises slipped into memory, blurring past and present until I was no longer sure what I was hearing. A laugh. Not here, not now, years ago. Jody's laugh, sharp as glass. Why is she even still alive? Words whispered behind fences, words I pretended not to hear. Then Carl's voice, younger, closer. Just wait here, Mom. I'll come back. Not tonight's words, but years past. At a gas station when his car broke down, when he told me to sit on a curb while he went to make a call. He'd come back then. He hadn't looked at me, though, not really. The scrape echoed again, pulling me back. I opened my eyes. The corridor stretched empty, metal gates like teeth. My reflection peered at me from the glass of a closed store. Distorted. Older. Unfamiliar. I whispered Frank's name. Just his name. My husband had been gone so long, but the syllable steadied me. He used to fall asleep in front of the television, the sound of late-night shows filling the house. I would cover him with a blanket, the same way I now covered my own shaking arms with this coat. Another noise. Closer this time. The squeak of wheels. A janitor's cart rolled past at the far end, pushed by a man who didn't look up. I wanted to call out, to ask for water, for proof I wasn't invisible. But my throat closed, and the cart disappeared into another hallway. The emptiness deepened. I tried lying down across the bench, but the ridges cut into my shoulder blades. Sleep would not come. My mind replayed each sound, looping them into threats. What if the guard didn't check again? What if no one did? The posters on the walls seemed to watch me, smiling families, children holding balloons, couples wrapped in each other's arms. Paper happiness lit by flickering bulbs. I pulled my purse tighter and whispered again, softer this time. I'm still here. The words didn't echo. They fell flat against the tile, swallowed whole. And I began to wonder if, by morning, anyone would believe I'd ever been here at all. The hours had stopped behaving. Time in a mall at night is not hours at all. It is the length of one buzzing light before it flickers again. It is the space between two distant clatters that might be carts or might be something else. It is the tightening of your own breath until you realize you've been holding it. My body ached from the bench. I shifted, sat straighter, slouched, crossed my arms, uncrossed them. Nothing eased it. The plastic pressed into my bones until I felt part of the structure, one more fixture in a place designed for people who had already left. The cold deepened. I tugged the coat tighter, but it only trapped the chill against me. My throat was dry. I would have given anything for water, even the melted ice from a forgotten soda cup. But the food court was shuttered, every counter sealed. I let my head fall back, eyes closed. Memories slipped through like thieves. Frank's hand over mine on the steering wheel, teaching me how to steady the car in rain. Carl as a boy, holding up a Lego castle, grinning like he'd built a kingdom. Ruby's small hand in mine, sticky from candy, her laugh bouncing down a sidewalk. And then the other memories followed. Carl turning away at the grocery store, Jody pretending not to see me, Ruby walking past me in the library like I was no one. That was worse than the cold. A sound cracked through the silence, metal on metal, maybe a shutter shifting. My eyes flew open. Nothing, just shadows. My pulse hammered too fast as if the air itself had teeth. I pressed my palms together. You're fine. You're fine. But the truth came sharper. I wasn't fine. I was trapped. Forgotten. Catalogued as a problem. That thought sat heavy, until another thought rose underneath it. If no one came for me, what then? Wait again? Apologize for existing in the wrong place? Number. The word startled me with its clarity. I stood. My knees wobbled. but I stayed upright. The mall stretched before me, endless tile and glass. Somewhere in here were offices, staff rooms, exits. They couldn't all be beyond me. I walked a few steps, the sound too loud in the emptiness. But it was better than sitting, better than shrinking smaller and smaller until I disappeared entirely. My reflection in a dark storefront stopped me. An old woman, purse clutched tight, eyes hollow. I stared at her until my back straightened, shoulders squared. Not a stray, not a straggler, not tonight. If I had to wait until morning, I would not wait meekly. I would move, I would search, I would carve proof of myself into this hollow place. Because waiting had turned into surrender, and I wasn't ready to surrender. I moved slowly at first, afraid the sound of my own shoes might betray me. But betray me to whom? The mall was emptied of witnesses, emptied of family, emptied of anyone who cared what happened to me. Only cameras watched, their red eyes blinking in the corners. The atrium stretched behind me, a stage I had sat on too long. Now I entered the narrow hallways between shops, where the signs were smaller, the lights dimmer. I remembered these places from years of errands. Employee doors marked "Authorized Only," stairwells painted the color of dust. The first hallway smelled of disinfectant and faint grease. A rolling gate covered the staff cafeteria. Past that, a metal door with no window, just a black handle. My hand trembled as I pulled. Locked. I pressed my ear to the metal. Nothing. No hum of voices, no footsteps, just the muffled throb of the building's machinery. I kept walking. My coat brushed against the wall. The tiles here were cracked, less polished than the gleaming floors of the main concourse. This was the mall's skeleton, the part hidden from customers. Another door appeared, this one marked "Exit" in glowing green letters. My chest leapt. I pushed. It didn't move. I shoved harder, both hands braced. Nothing. A small sign explained in stern letters, "Emergency exit. Alarm will sound." I stared at it, breath shallow. If I pushed harder, maybe it would open. Maybe I could spill out into the night. But the alarm, would it summon the guard? The police? Would they see me as victim or trespasser? The thought of being handled, questioned, judged again, twisted my stomach. I stepped back, letting the idea die. The corridor narrowed further. At the end was another door, half ajar, light seeping out in a pale strip. I hurried, my pulse beating faster than my feet. The room beyond was small, filled with mops, plastic bins, shelves stacked with cleaner. A janitor's closet. Not escape, not freedom. Still, I stepped inside, pulling the door shut behind me. The light was humming, harsh against the stale smell of chemicals. But at least it was mine for a moment. A place where I wasn't visible to the cameras, where the bench and its waiting couldn't find me. I sat on an overturned bucket, listening to the hum of the fluorescent bulb. How many doors had I opened in my life? Bedroom doors to wake a child for school. Kitchen doors with casseroles balanced in my hands. Hospital doors where Frank lay too still. And now one door I couldn't open, not without consequences. I pressed my palms against my knees and whispered, "I'm not done." The words were shaky, but they lived. The closet smelled of bleach and despair, but it was also proof. I had moved. I had acted. The mall had closed me in, but I had found a corner it hadn't assigned. And that felt, for the first time all night, like survival. The janitor's closet was cramped, but for a while it felt safer than the open expanse of tile and silence. I sat on the bucket, coat tight, letting the buzz of the fluorescent light lull me into something like rest. But the reprieve didn't last. The heavy clank of keys echoed down the corridor. A low voice muttered into a radio. Footsteps, steady, practiced. The guard. I froze, pulse hammering in my throat. He'd left me on that bench with instructions. Don't wander. And here I was, hidden in a closet like a child sneaking cookies. The footsteps paused, then came closer. A beam of light swept across the crack beneath the door. "Ma'am?" His voice was sharper now, stripped of politeness. "You back here?" I didn't answer. My breath betrayed me, shallow and quick. The door rattled. Then it swung open. His flashlight blinded me. "There you are." He filled the doorway, bulk and authority. "What did I tell you?" "Stay put." That wasn't a suggestion. I shielded my eyes. I was cold. I was just looking for a place to sit. "A closet?" His laugh was short, humorless. "You think this is a hotel? You think I got time to play hide and seek?" Heat rose in my face. "I didn't mean, you know how this looks?" He snapped. "Wandering the service halls, sneaking into staff areas. Cameras picked you up. Supervisors already asking questions." He shook his head, disgust curling his mouth. "Elderly or not, rules are rules." The word elderly landed like a stone. He didn't even see me, just the label. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I said quietly. "I just didn't want to sit like cargo, waiting to be shipped out." He sighed, long and theatrical, like he'd heard it all before. "Look, lady, I don't care what your story is. You were told to stay. You didn't. Now I gotta write it up." He pulled out his clipboard, pen clicking. My name, scribbled again. My presence, reduced to lines on a form. Something in me snapped. "Do you think I want to be here?" My voice shook, but I didn't lower it. "Do you think I enjoy being treated like a stray? Like I wandered in off the street?" My family left me. They told me to wait. And they left me. His eyes flickered, the first crack in his armor. But the pen kept moving. "I can't fix your family, ma'am. I can only fix what's in front of me. And what's in front of me is a liability wandering places she shouldn't be." The word burned. Liability. Not mother, not woman, not even guest. He snapped the clipboard shut. Back to the bench. Now I stepped past him, the bleach-scented air of the closet clinging to me. My shoes scuffed the floor louder than I wanted. As I walked back toward the atrium, I realized the truth. I wasn't trapped only by locked doors. I was trapped in their idea of me. And maybe, just maybe, breaking free of that would be harder than breaking out of the mall itself. The bench was the same, but I wasn't. I sat where he'd told me, purse in my lap, coat pulled close. From a distance, I might have looked obedient again, an old woman resigned to waiting. But inside, something sharp had shifted. He'd called me a liability, not a person, not a mother. A liability. I rolled the word in my head like a bitter seed. It had a way of growing, of choking out air. If I stayed here, I would let it take root. I watched the guard's shape disappear down the hall. His keys clanged, then faded. The sound left a hole behind it. The atrium was vast and empty now. Banners still hung from the ceiling. Fall savings, bring the family. Their cheer mocked the silence. I looked up at them until my neck ached. Number. Not this. Not anymore. I opened my purse, searching. Dead phone, wallet. Keys to a house no one wanted me in. A crumpled tissue. Nothing useful. But the act itself, checking, taking inventory, made me feel less like cargo, more like a passenger preparing for a trip. What did I know? The exits were locked. The guard patrolled on a schedule, keys loud, footsteps steady. There were staff areas, doors with warnings, emergency exits that threatened alarms, and cameras. Always cameras. I tilted my head back, spotting the red blink of one overhead. It watched me like a patient eye. I raised my chin to it, not lowering my gaze. If I was already branded suspicious, what more could it do? My thoughts tangled, then straightened. Maybe I couldn't outmuscle locked doors, but I could outweight him differently, not passively, strategically. I traced the map of the mall in my mind. Department stores at each end, Service corridors behind them, food court upstairs, where smells of grease lingered even now. Somewhere there had to be a loading dock. Trucks came in daily. I'd seen them. A loading dock meant gates, and gates meant opportunity. The idea lit something in me I hadn't felt in hours. Not hope exactly, but motion. I stood, careful this time, moving slowly so the cameras saw only an old woman stretching her legs. My knees protested, but I walked a few paces, turned, sat again, as if restless but harmless. Then I waited. Not for Carl, not for Jody, not even for morning. I waited for the rhythm of his patrol. Keys, steps, pause, repeat. If I learned the pattern, I could move in the silence between. The bench no longer held me. It became a staging ground. For the first time since they'd left me, I wasn't thinking about rescue. I was thinking about escape. The mall had its own heartbeat. I listened for it, counting the spaces between. The guard's footsteps, steady as a clock. The rattle of keys when he checked a door. Then the hush that followed, as though the whole building inhaled with him. I stayed still for 2 full cycles, head bent like I was dozing. My hands rested on my purse, but every muscle hummed. When the silence came again, I rose. My knees flared, but I bit down on the sound they wanted to make. Each step was slow, careful, the way I used to sneak past Ruby's room when she'd just fallen asleep. The cameras blinked above me, but I told myself I was only stretching. Just a woman with nowhere urgent to be. I reached the edge of the atrium and slipped into a side hallway. The tiles here were duller, the light colder. A service door loomed ahead, plain metal, with a small square of glass set high. I tiptoed close and peered through. A corridor stretched beyond, gray and endless. A cart was parked against the wall, stacked with flattened cardboard. No people. The handle was locked. I pressed anyway, testing it. Nothing. Behind me, faint and far, came the jingle of keys. My stomach lurched. Too soon. I turned, pulse hammering, and hurried back toward the bench. My shoes squeaked once against the tile, louder than thunder in the silence. I sat just as his shadow lengthened across the floor. My breathing was wild, but I forced my shoulders down, my face blank. The guard appeared, flashlight sweeping. His eyes skimmed me, lingered only a second, then moved on. The beam traced the shops, the banners, the gates. He muttered into his radio and walked away. The rhythm began again. I waited longer this time, until his keys were a faint memory. Then I stood again, slower, and moved in the opposite direction. This hallway smelled of fryer oil and lemon cleaner. The food court's skeleton. I passed closed counters, stacks of chairs turned upside down on tables. My reflection followed me in the glass cases of a bakery, pale and thin. At the far end, another door. No glass this time, just heavy steel with a faded sticker, deliveries only. I touched the handle. It moved, but only slightly, as though chained from the other side. I pressed harder, heart leaping. A faint clang answered, the sound of metal resisting. Not open. Not yet. Still, my chest lifted. This was the closest I'd come to air all night. Proof the world still existed just beyond these walls. The jangle of keys echoed again, closer now. I stepped back, retreating into shadow. My pulse drummed in my ears. I would try again. Next cycle, and the next after that. Because I was no longer waiting for someone to return. I was moving, even if the mall itself tried to chain me in place. I told myself it was only another cycle, only another gap between the clatter of his keys and the sweep of his flashlight. But this time, I didn't just stretch my legs. I walked with purpose. The food court lay hushed, chairs stacked like skeletons, tables gleaming faintly under the dimmed bulbs. My footsteps sounded louder than before, each one a dare. My pulse throbbed in my ears, threatening to drown everything else. The delivery's only door waited. Heavy, gray, a promise. I wrapped both hands around the handle. Cold metal bit my palms. I pulled, steady, harder. The chain inside groaned. A metallic scrape echoed down the hall, sharper than I'd meant. Too loud. I froze. The air felt suddenly alive, charged as though the mall itself had heard me. Above, a camera's red light blinked. I stared at it, breath shallow. Did it move? Did it know? A voice crackled over a distant radio. Muffled at first, then closer. South corridor. Check noise keys rattled. Fast this time. Coming toward me. Panic surged. I tugged once more, desperate. The chain held, cruel and absolute. The clang betrayed me louder than any scream. I stepped back, my back hitting a shuttered counter. My pulse jumped so hard my vision blurred. Then the flashlight cut through the dark. The guard's voice was sharp, stripped of patience. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I swallowed, words catching. I thought it was an exit. I needed air." He marched closer, boots heavy. The beam of light pinned me like an insect. "Air?" His laugh was cold. "You think this is a park? You're tampering with secure property." "I'm not tampering." My voice cracked, but didn't break. "I'm trying to leave. Isn't that what you want? For me to be gone?" His jaw worked, a muscle twitching. "You don't get to decide that. You move when we say." Not before the word we hung there, bigger than him. The mall, the rules, the system that saw me as cargo, stray, liability. I straightened, though my knees trembled. "I've been waiting all day." They told me to sit, and I sat. They told me to wait, and I waited. But I'm done waiting. For a moment, his eyes flickered, something human in them, quickly smothered. "You step out of line again," he said, low. "I call the cops. You want that? A report with your name, trespassing, resisting staff orders? Resisting, as if I were a criminal." I held his gaze. My reflection shone faintly in the shutter behind me, a woman caught between glass and steel. "No," I said quietly. "I don't want that." His flashlight lowered, but only slightly. "Then back to the bench." And stay there. I walked past him, coat tight, pulse still wild. His keys clattered at his side, each jingle like a lock snapping shut behind me. But inside, something else had unlocked. I wasn't afraid of being caught anymore. I was afraid of never trying again. The bench welcomed me like a sentence. Cold plastic, hard edges, the smell of old floor polish hanging in the air. The guard's flashlight still burned behind my eyes, and the echo of his words clung to me. Trespassing, resisting, liability. I sat, hands folded in my lap, coat drawn close. To anyone watching, I looked subdued, tamed. That was the picture he wanted the cameras to keep. But inside, a storm had started. Why had they left me? I had repeated the question silently all evening, always pulling back before it cut too deep. I'd told myself there had been a mistake. Miscommunication. That Carl meant to come back but was delayed, distracted, pulled away by the kids. But 6 hours? A locked mall? The voicemail I'd never get? Number. The truth seeped in, unwelcome but undeniable. They had left me because it was easier. Easier than waiting for me to catch up. Easier than including me at the table. Easier than carrying the weight of someone they'd already decided was expendable. The thought pressed on my chest until I couldn't breathe. I shut my eyes, but memory broke through. Carl at 12, rolling his eyes when I reminded him to say thank you. Carl at 20, promising to pay back the loan and never mentioning it again. Carl last month, walking past me in the grocery aisle, phone glued to his ear, not even pausing. Jody's voice came next, sharp as glass. Why is she even still alive? Not whispered now, but shouted across the empty atrium. It rang against the shuttered shops, bounced off the fountain, filled every corner. I gripped my purse tighter, nails digging into the fabric. If I disappeared tonight, who would notice? The guard would file paperwork, annoyed, The cameras would capture a flicker of motion, logged and forgotten. Carl might see a missed call, shrug, assume I'd managed. Ruby, maybe Ruby, would pause. But even she had walked past me once, eyes blank, like I was no one. The bench cut into my spine. I shifted, restless. I remembered Frank's last words before surgery, the ones I'd folded in my wallet for years. Don't fold in. Stay open. Live with your hands unclenched. Unclenched. But my fists were tight now, nails leaving crescents in my palms. Maybe they wanted me invisible, a burden erased. Maybe that was the role they'd been nudging me toward for years. But if I stayed here, silent and small, I'd be proving them right. I opened my eyes. The atrium stared back, steel, glass, banners promising joy. A mausoleum of commerce, a place that had swallowed me because my family had already let me go. The truth sat heavy. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been abandoned. And that truth, sharp and bitter, gave me something the guard hadn't expected. Fuel. The silence pressed in, but it no longer felt like weight. It felt like tinder waiting for flame. I sat straighter on the bench, coat tight across my chest, and let the anger settle. Not wild, not loud, but clean. A line drawn in my own blood. They had abandoned me. Not by accident, not by distraction, by choice. The mall only made visible what had been true for years. I was easier to leave behind. And if that was the case, then why should I keep waiting for anyone's permission to move? The thought lit me from the inside. For the first time all night, the word fear shrank small. I looked up at the red blink of the nearest camera. It watched me like an eye, patient, judgmental. I raised my chin to it. See me? I thought. Record me. I'm done being invisible. My purse sat heavy in my lap. I dug through it. Wallet, tissue, the useless phone. Keys to a house that hadn't felt like mine in years. They jingled faintly, a reminder of doors that did open once, of thresholds I had crossed freely. I closed my fist around them, the metal biting into my palm. I would find another door. One the guard didn't expect me to try. The pattern of his patrol was clear now. 15 minutes between passes. Keys rattling, flashlight beams sweeping, then gone again. I stood. Not slowly this time, not timidly. My knees wobbled, but I forced them steady. The mall stretched wide, corridors branching like veins. I chose the one he least lingered in, the side wing with the department store. Its glass doors had been chained hours ago, but I remembered something. Stores that big always had back rooms, stock rooms, delivery docks. A dock meant a way out. I walked quickly, not sneaking, not pretending, just moving. My shoes struck tile with the rhythm of intent. The mannequins in the darkened windows stared blankly, dressed in clothes for lives I no longer lived. Their silence cheered me on. At the store entrance, the grate was down. I crouched, peering beneath. A narrow gap where metal met tile. Not enough to crawl under, but enough to remind me this barrier was human-made. Someone had pulled it down. Someone could lift it. I tugged. It rattled, loud in the empty air. I didn't care. The sound echoed, bounced down the hall. My heart raced, but not with fear, with fire. If he came, let him. If alarms blared, let them. Better noise than silence. Better confrontation than erasure. I wasn't going back to that bench. I pressed my palms flat against the grate, the cold metal biting back. My arms shook, but I heaved upward. It groaned, heavy, stubborn. But it moved, an inch, then two. Chains clanked inside, resisting. Still the gap widened. My breath came fast, sharp. Behind me, faint and growing. The jangle of keys. I didn't stop. Not this time. The grate rattled above me, a groan of metal giving way. My arms burned, but I kept pulling. The gap was wide enough now for me to see the darkness beyond. The promise of another space, maybe another door. Then came the keys. Louder. Closer. The flashlight's beam split the dim like a blade. Stop! His voice cracked through the air, sharp, commanding. "Hands off the gate!" Now I didn't let go. Not yet. My breath came heavy, sweat slicking my palms. I said, "Stop." I lowered the grate slowly, deliberately. The metal slammed shut with a final clang, but not because he ordered it, because I chose it. I turned toward him, chest rising and falling, pulse wild but steady. His flashlight pinned me. His hand hovered near the radio clipped to his belt. "That's it. I'm calling the cops. Trespassing, breaking and entering. Whatever sticks. You think that scares me?" My voice surprised even me. Low, steady, louder than I intended. It echoed across the empty hall. His brow furrowed. "It should. Do you want a record? Do you want to spend the night in a cell instead of on that bench?" I took a step closer, into the cone of his light. For the first time, I didn't shrink from it. "You've had me sitting like cargo for 6 hours. You knew I was left. You knew no one came back. And you want to talk about records?" He blinked, thrown off. "That's not my problem. My job is to keep the property secure. Your job is to keep people safe," I snapped. "But you didn't. You locked me in like trash waiting for collection." His jaw tightened. His hand went to the radio. "One more word and I—" "Then do it," I cut in, sharp as glass. "Call them. Tell the police you found an old woman abandoned by her family in your mall. Tell them you kept her penned up on a plastic bench because it was easier than helping. Tell them you threatened her when she tried to leave." The words hung heavy, echoing. His grip on the radio slackened. He stared at me, eyes unreadable. "You think anyone's going to believe that?" he muttered. I stepped closer still, close enough to see the sweat beading at his temple. "I don't need them to believe it. I need you to hear it." We stood in silence, the air thick, the mall itself holding its breath. For the first time, he looked away. The flashlight dropped to the floor, its beam sliding across tiles. His keys jingled as he shifted uneasily. "You don't understand how this works," he said finally, softer. "No," I replied. "I understand perfectly. You keep me waiting until I vanish, until I don't matter, but I'm still here, and I'm not waiting anymore." Something flickered in his face. Anger, guilt, I couldn't tell. But he didn't lift the radio again. Behind us, the grate groaned faintly, still unsettled from my pull. A door that wasn't quite done resisting, and neither was I. The silence between us stretched long enough to feel permanent. The flashlight lay at an angle on the tile, beam broken against the grate, making shadows jump across my face. His keys rattled once, then stilled in his palm. "You're stubborn," he said finally. Not as a compliment, not as an insult, more like a diagnosis. "I'm alive," I answered. "That's all." He studied me for a long moment, jaw tight, eyes flicking between the grate and my hands. Then he let out a sharp breath. "You want out?" "Fine. Maybe I can make that happen." Hope flared, foolishly, recklessly, before I caught myself. "What do you mean?" He crouched, lifted the flashlight, and trained it low, away from my face. "There's another exit. Staff only, not on the cameras. I could walk you there." My chest tightened. "Why would you?" "Because I don't need paperwork," he said bluntly. "If the cops come, I'm stuck here until dawn writing reports." "You? You're a headline waiting to happen. Easier if you're gone." His words dripped with the same ease my family had chosen. Easier if you're gone. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed it was another cage. But the image of that locked grate, the weight of the bench waiting for me, pushed hard. "Where?" I asked. He jerked his chin. "North Wing, service hall. But you follow me." No wandering, no questions. I walked beside him, not behind. His boots struck heavy against tile. My steps tried to match, though my knees trembled. The North Wing was darker than the rest. Shops closed years ago, posters curling in the windows. It smelled of dust and old glue. The hum of lights grew faint until only our footsteps remained. At the end, he stopped by a plain gray door. No sign, no handle, just a keyhole. He turned the ring of keys slowly, deliberately, like a man in full control. The lock clicked. He pushed the door open. A narrow stairwell descended into shadow. Cold air drifted up, damp and metallic. "Down there," he said. "It'll lead you outside." Quietly, I peered in. The stairs looked endless, the dark swallowing each step. No light, no guarantee. Something coiled in my gut. "You're not coming?" He shook his head. "I don't leave my post. You want out? You go alone." The air between us thickened again, heavier than before. My skin prickled. What if it wasn't an exit? What if it was a basement, a boiler room, another lock? What if I vanished into that stairwell and no one ever asked where I'd gone? Behind me stretched the mall, benches, cameras, chains. In front of me, a darkness that promised escape or oblivion. His eyes met mine, flat and unreadable. "Your choice. Go back to the bench or walk through." For the first time all night, the decision was mine. And I knew whichever way I chose, something would break forever. I stood at the edge of the stairwell, air rising cold against my face. The guard watched, arms folded, waiting to see if I would vanish myself. 6 hours on a bench, 6 years of being the afterthought, a lifetime of waiting for someone else to decide when I could move. No more. I gripped the rail, rough with chipped paint, and stepped down. The first stair groaned. Then the second. My pulse thundered, but I didn't stop. Each step was its own refusal, against the bench, against the silence, against being left behind. The door closed above me with a hollow slam. Keys rattled once, then faded. I was alone. The stairwell narrowed, the air damp. At the bottom waited another door, metal and scarred. I pressed the bar. It gave. Cold night air spilled over me. Real air. Street sounds faint. An engine, a siren far away, the shuffle of wind. I stepped out, blinking against the dark. The mall loomed behind me, all glass and steel, but I didn't look back. For the first time in hours, I was under the open sky. No cameras, no chains. Just me, standing, still breathing. I walked, not fast, not running, just steady. Past dumpsters, past the loading dock where trucks once lined up. My shoes struck gravel, a rougher rhythm than the polished tiles. The night tasted of oil and rain. On the sidewalk, I paused. My purse sagged heavy on my shoulder, filled with useless things. Keys to a house that no longer welcomed me, receipts from groceries no one thanked me for, a phone with numbers that rang to silence. I reached inside and pulled out the keys, cold, sharp, familiar. I set them on the curb. They caught the streetlight and gleamed for a second, then lay still. The phone came next. I powered it down, slipped it back in the purse, but lighter now. Across the street, a diner's neon flickered open. A place for strangers, but at least strangers looked at you when you ordered coffee. I crossed. Inside, the air smelled of fried onions and cheap soap. A waitress glanced up, tired but kind. "Table for one?" she asked. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, certain. She led me to a booth by the window. I slid in, the vinyl cool against my back, and for the first time all day, I didn't feel like cargo waiting to be claimed. I ordered tea. She brought it in a chipped mug, steam curling upward. I wrapped my hands around it, heat sinking into my bones. Through the glass, the mall glowed faint in the distance, a hollow monument of promises. I let it go. They had left me. The guard had tried to cage me, but I had walked out on my own feet. I sipped the tea, bitter, strong, honest. No bench, no waiting, just me, choosing.